Nasti vidya samam chakshuhu. Vidya or knowledge or education is the eye of the social body, which enables us to see and interpret. Therefore, the relevance of the topic cannot be overemphasized. This is going to be a deliberation on pathways to transform education, transitioning into leadership. We have scholarly academicians, academics who will be part of this session. I will start by inviting our moderator to take over as soon as the stage is set. Our moderator is the chairperson of strategy area as well as the chairperson of the Center of Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship at IIM Ahmedabad. She also chairs the Young Entrepreneurs Program at IIMA. Her name featured in the coffee table book Top 50 Inspiring Women in Gujarat in the year 2022 that was launched by the Honorable Union Minister Srimati Smriti Irani. Please meet Professor Chitra Singla. Welcome, madam. With your permission, shall I also call the panelists? Can we have our speakers on the podium, please? Professor Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor, Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology. He holds a PhD in Management Studies from Indian Institute of Science and has held transformative roles at IIM Kozhikode, Kerala Startup Mission and IIT MK. Dr. Saji Gopinath, welcome. Part of the distinguished minds in dialogue is Professor Achuthsankar S. Nair. Heartiest welcome, Professor. He is the Professor and Head of the Department of Computational Biology and Bioinformatics at the University of Kerala. Holds dual PhDs, one in engineering and another in music from the University of Kerala. Has held notable roles including as the Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences and Technology and Director of the Center for Development of Imaging Technology, Government of Kerala. Good evening to you, Professor. Welcome. We would also like to have the pleasure of hosting Mr. Karol Toth. Welcome. The Principal, Cochin International School, who has exceptional command over education management, secondary education, educational consulting, lesson planning and educational technology. This is truly a panel to listen to. Over to our moderator for the session.
Good evening, everyone. They have given us a deadline of 40 minutes. It's the professors and the teachers who are used to give deadlines to their students. So it's a tough task for us to meet the deadline. I think we are going to taste our own medicine today. So without wasting much time, as the Compare has announced that the panel topic is transforming education. In 40 minutes, it's too less a time to cover all the topics. So we said we will divide it in two parts. The first part is, do education institutes in India at school level, college level, university level, first, do they need to transform themselves in the with the impending disruption that is happening in education sector? And second part of the discussion we will have is, what can these institutes do to develop entrepreneurial acumen among the students? And I heard previous two discussions, and there was a lot of curiosity around what can academia do. Hopefully we'll try to address some of those questions during this panel discussion. So to the panelists, maybe I'll ask two broad questions one by one, and I'll seek all three of you's input on those questions. So my first question is, we all know that education sector is seeing quite a bit of change, one because of the online education, which post-COVID has become even more important with companies like Coursera, Unacademy, etc., also giving certificates, not only from Indian universities, but sitting in India, you can get certificate from foreign universities. And second, there is disruption happening with the use of generative AI, ChatGPT, etc., etc. So given these are the changes that are happening in the ecosystem, to you, Mr. Saji, that what is your response to this, that how can educational institutes stay relevant and respond to this disruption? Do they need to be entrepreneurial first before they teach their students to be entrepreneur?
Okay, thank you. I would put this way. I'm speaking about higher education system. If you look at higher education system of today, it's very much similar to business system in 1990s. Now, if you look at that point of time, the business system in the country was being crippled by a large number of regulations. Many of the organizations who wanted to flourish were not allowed to do that. There were a lot of artificial limitations, license charge, we used to call. Now, if you look at today education system, it's very similar. You have such a great regulation. In fact, the Honorable Minister was speaking just now. So much of centralized norms for education at all levels, leaving some of the central funded institutions and institutions of excellence. Others were not allowed to perform to the level they could because of artificial restrictions. You cannot offer programs which you want to offer, and a lot of challenges are there. But that is actually going to go. Along with this technological changes which you spoke, you also have a new education policy which is actually trying to bring very sweeping changes. So to me, it is exactly the type of change which happened in 1990s in industrial system or business system is happening at the time of the education system. So if you look back, you will see that some of those companies were doing extremely well at that point of time. They are not there. I mean, forget about they are not doing well, they are not at all there. And some of them others are actually really, really grown big, both in public sector and in private sector. The same thing can happen to education institutions also. Some of the names which we think today are really big, if they don't make changes, they may actually become irrelevant, but others will definitely can actually grow bigger. So what is a fundamental change which is happening? Fundamental change, according to me, is happening is that you are giving a lot of freedom and autonomy to the learner, which we never used to give it in our society. We used to give it to, we were focusing on access and equity, but we never allow a student to learn what he or she wants to learn. In fact, Professor Achuthsankar will tell that how difficult he had when he was trying to do one more PhD in a very different subject, right? It was never expected that a person can actually do a program in music along with bioinformatics. So that is the challenge currently we have. That is actually going to go. And many of these things, unfortunately, is not happening in the core institutions. That's basically where the online education, alternate education, etc. is coming to the picture. So this is where the conventional education institutions have to play a bigger role. They may have to transform and say that at the end, education institutions have to think about how learner excel. And that is the entrepreneurial aspect they have to bring in. And that can actually happen only when they actually rethink many of the conventional aspects, rethink the way the education has been delivered, they rethink the way the whole thing is structured, and that change is something which is inevitable if you really wanted to take the technology challenge, you need to take the challenge of the parallel online education, and also the issues of regulatory changes. I just want one more point and then stop here. There is also another challenge that education by nature is a not-for-profit entity in India. If you are running an education institution, I cannot make profit, I can make surplus. But as an investor, I cannot take the money out. So there are other methods people are adopting. But on the other hand, all these alternate entities which are coming, the online education systems or the people who are providing services, they are not like that. And that is because of that, they are actually getting a large amount of venture capital in them. So this is a challenge the conventional education systems are actually facing. You have a cash-strapped, both private or public, cash-strapped conventional system. There is a cash-rich alternate system which actually getting in inroads, and many times they may not go into the depth of education also. So this is a problem which we need to solve also as we go ahead, which also require that institutions have to think very, very differently from what they were doing in the past.
But is there a particular change you are expecting, either your university or some other university to lead, in the sense that you have already thought about it, that this is what we are going to do?
Yeah, I think if you reflect back on the previous panel discussion, the title, no? The famine in a fertile world, that is exactly the point. All of us are actually sitting on such an amount of resources, such an amount of aspects. We are not able to really sweat that. At the digital university, which is formed only 2 years, we have already are actually almost self-sustaining, not from fees, not from government grants, but from the activities which we do. 80% of my revenue now comes from non-grant, non-fees. It's possible because you only need to think how do you actually use your IPs to be sweat. You look at the research opportunities available and things like that. So that option is definitely there. Plus there are unaddressed constituencies, relearning. See, when you spoke about the AI and others coming in a big way, it is not only for our fresh people. We also require people who are existing in the industries also need to be retrained. Yes. And that is a role education institutions play. So you have enough number of avenues available today, especially in a country which is growing at around 8-9%. The opportunities are ample. The only thing is many times we have not thought about that. So if you can think about that, you actually have a viable mechanism, and that is basically where you have to be entrepreneurial and innovative.
Okay, great. Mr. Shankar, your views on this?
I will respond to the disruptive, about the situation created by the disruptive technologies. You specifically mentioned about online education and generative AI. You know, when new technologies launch themselves, they have this predictive disruptive behavior, but in addition to that, we must know they actually create some unexpected effects. For example, if you take agriculture, you know, we have very modern agricultural techniques and technologies, but after they have run through, what remains is actually a great new brand name is created out of nowhere. In Kerala, if you go to a shop, you want to buy something, the most valuable brand name that nobody owns, nobody promotes, is the word Nadan. So if somebody says something is Nadan, it gets a great value. You know, where does this name brand come from? Where does this value come from? It comes from the advent of the new technologies. So by contrast, something that we have, which we never noticed, suddenly gets a value. So similarly with generative AI. Generative AI actually is a benchmark to know what a teacher is. You know, look at Google. You throw a question into it, saying a student throws a question at 12 o'clock into Google in the midnight, asking, how do I make a bomb? Then Google answers. And if you ask ChatGPT, ChatGPT says against my ethical standards. But if you ask a human teacher, that teacher would jump up, try to rush to the house of the student or call the parents and really pull the student back from doing anything that is antisocial. So actually it is these technologies that tell us what a human teacher is special about. Now I want to say, for example, when online education comes, the luxury and the greatness of a classroom, face-to-face classroom, is evident to me. I taught for 33, 36 years. It is evident to me only now, after the online education came. So I would say there are a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities that arise because of this contrast. For example, you know, the minister earlier said about the tourism being a great opportunity for Kerala. This is very well known. Why don't we think of launching academic tourism, where, you know, you say, come, be in a houseboat and study a new programming language or study Sanskrit. Why this is more attractive now is because of the boredom created by, or the I would say, not a very humane interaction that an online class gives. So the teacher also in the classroom also is now by contrast a very valuable asset to education system, as not perceived so far. So we have to respond to these technologies not only to utilize them to produce value, but also in contrast try to sell or try to leverage on what was there without these technologies. This is my initial take on this concept of disruptive technologies.
Just to give another perspective, I hear you. I have been a teacher for 13 years with Ahmedabad, and I do understand when you say that after online came into picture, I realized the value of in-class learning. The energy exchange that happens in class cannot be created, you know, in online education. But I also see that online education has opened doors for people who are sitting in such remote areas of India, and they had never thought of accessing education in all these popular universities in India or abroad. So I do see that one, it is cheaper for sure. Second, it is accessible, and there are so many women also who are enrolling up, who are saying that we can't leave a kid behind, we can't leave the family behind to do some course, you know, in a university, but it's an online platform that is available. I can do this course, I can upskill myself, not only women, even other genders, right, who are saying that, you know, this is good. So somewhere it is adding immense value in upskilling.
Yeah, we are not in opposition. Actually, I did mention that these technologies have to be leveraged.
Yeah.
They produce new value, and you're very true when you say, you know, there are a large number of people, you know, trying to learn things which they could have never imagined. You know, somebody wants to learn Chinese, you know, you go up to a Coursera course and do that. And what I am suggesting is that while that takes off, it also in contrast tells us what to do with what we had traditionally.
True, true.
That is what I was trying to point out.
No, I hear you. In fact, I was reading a Forbes article which had given a very interesting analogy that there was a time calculator used to, were seen as a great tool. And now those calculators have been integrated in-class learning, and we use those Excel sheets, you know, within the class
with ChatGPT.
Similarly, these AI can be integrated.
Yeah, with generative AI, I would also like to say we are moving forward to a newer situation in the health sector. You know, we talk of lifestyle diseases which were mostly related to your body not exercising well. We are soon going to have a problem of your brain not exercising well, and we would be required, doctors might prescribe you to, you know, kind of reel out the multiplication table every day morning so that your brain gets some exercise. So, we need to actually contrast that also.
No, I hear you. That's very much possible, yeah, and it's already happening, I think, yes. Karol, any views on this?
Sure. First of all, I would like to appreciate the focus on ethics and education, which, after all, that is something that's always discussed. In education, education isn't just a set of skills or content that one is supposed to learn. It's values that come with that. I mean, to be a productive member of human society, we cannot be just all a bunch of sociopaths sort of in a room. So I really appreciate that. In terms of technology, as a school teacher, not in higher education, but very much at the grassroots level. As a school teacher of many years, I have always liked using technology in the classroom, and I found it very useful. I have also witnessed over the last, say, 20 years the tremendous changes that happened in the way technology is used. When I was a young school teacher and I was just beginning to teach, the technology was a blackboard and a white chalk. But now, of course, there are so many resources at our hands. I mean, just the Google Classrooms that my teachers are using every day. And I find it very useful as a teacher and as a parent. At the same time, I have to say I'm yet to meet a bad teacher who has been made good through technology. You need the human resources. Absolutely. I think at the heart of education is the human being. It's the teacher in the classroom with the students. And a good teacher will deliver a wonderful class, a great lecture in a shack. And a bad teacher, no amount of technology, no amount of resources, no amount of money you will throw at that person will turn the lesson into something valuable and something memorable. So, and that brings me to the second point, which is the teachers. I think that is the most important part, of course. I think in the previous panels, the discussion about the point about human resources being the most important part of anything. I think in education, of course, it's the teacher, the educator, that we need the most, and there is also the greatest challenge. Worldwide today, there is a tremendous shortage of quality teachers, quality educators, and especially in India. Even more so in India than anywhere else. So I think getting the right people who are not just qualified, but quality human beings. That's what you want when you are working with children especially, but you know, any young people, anyone who wants to be educated. I think that's a challenge. But of course, the opportunity is that, as long as people keep having children, there will be jobs for us. So I think there's always going to be that opportunity for any entrepreneur.
But Karol, my question to you is that right now online education is impacting the higher education system because most of the courses are for higher education. Do you see that in future there will be a trend where online education will also be seen as a substitute to school education? I understand the importance of teacher, human intervention, but do you think that kind of substitution to some extent is possible or it is on its way?
I think it's inevitable in many ways. In fact, most people are not aware, but these kind of the remote learning has been happening for decades in certain areas of the world where, for geographic or political whatever reasons, students were not able to attend lessons. I think the most obvious example that comes to my mind are the students living out back in Australia, where the density of population is so low that the students have been learning through radio since the 50s, I think. So remote education has always been happening. It's always been a substitute for in-person learning, and that way, it always existed and it will keep on existing. I think the challenge is how to make it as good, or how to make it as valuable as the in-person learning, as students coming to school. How can you replicate student having friends, having social life, learning, in the corridor, or just having a chat with the teacher? Those are things that are also part of learning. We are not human beings just because we can pass an exam, or we learn from a book, or we can solve a problem. It's the skills that we develop through interacting with one another. I think that's the challenge. Anyway, so let's see.
Yeah. So what I conclude from your inputs, from three of your inputs, is that human touch and wherever subjectivity is required, where the direction to the right path is required, the teachers will always stay relevant, and so will be the schools and colleges. Now I'm just changing gears a bit. What do you think that schools, colleges, and universities can do to develop entrepreneurial acumen among students? And why I'm asking this question is, as I interact with more and more entrepreneurs, and I chair Young Entrepreneurs Program, I'm also the chairperson of Center of Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship at IMA. Somehow, I have started to believe, and this is my personal belief, that somehow our education system is making people risk averse. That is something I have started to believe, that somehow our system is geared in such a way. What we teach them is stability. What we teach them is that do not experiment beyond a point, because that is what schools want you to learn certain things in a certain ways. There are some changes I'm seeing in international boards, etc., but not to that extent. So is there something that academic institutes do consciously to develop that entrepreneurial acumen among students? Mr. Saji, any comments on that?
I fully agree with you. I think the challenge of our education system is that we are teaching Gen Z by millennials with a 1960 mindset and maybe a 1950 orientation. That is actually the challenge. See, when you look at, we need to understand that the country has actually moved quite a bit from what it was in the past. Conventionally, we always believe that we don't have opportunities. So that's why we always say that take the first job, be stable, don't take any risk and things like that. And what is the risk which we are speaking about? We are speaking about the risk of failure. Right from day one in your school onwards, you never allow a child to fail. You never allow a child to experiment. There are exceptions, but I'm saying normally that is the way we will actually look at. We always focus on competition. We don't say that the world is so big, opportunities are so big, you need other things to do, right? You can collaborate and do great things. Now, even if you look at entrepreneurship today, the amount of risk you are speaking about is much, much lesser than what you have. In the past, if I am a first generation entrepreneur and I start my career in entrepreneurship, assume, it takes a lot of time for you to get at par with somebody who has taken a stable job. That's not the case today. An young entrepreneur will earn as much as or even more in maybe in 3 months, 4 months. There is enough and more private capital available, venture capital available. But we, unfortunately, education system is not even aware of that. They still believe that there is a huge amount of risk which is happening, and if I get into one particular industry and it fails, the whole world is lost. It's not so. In fact, you actually get a far better job even if you are fail on enterprises. In fact, when I was in startup mission, we actually in the startup policy we made a statement saying that enterprises fail, entrepreneurs will never fail.
Yeah.
So even the enterprises fail, the entrepreneurs still learn and move ahead. Unfortunately, this has not been the common thing in the what you call the society, and because society, the education institutions are also. So the change is something which we are not really understanding. In fact, if you take many colleges, there are a lot of students who have already been entrepreneurs and they are earning because they use newer models. They use YouTube, for example, to take their products directly out to the market, their skills out to the market. They earn far more than maybe what we call as conventional established entrepreneurs. So this change is something which we are not aware or maybe not be cognizant to. And that's basically where maybe the institutions have to be taught that we are, I will make a bold statement here, we are not in a world of shortages anymore, we are in a world of abundance. And when you are, the world of prosperity is not to be managed with the mindset which always look at the world of shortages. No.
But my question is a little more specific, that do you think universities can take certain actionable initiatives which can nurture entrepreneurship in university campuses?
Yes, you can. But unfortunately, again, I think this is not only in India, but across the world. If you look at the number of faculty members who get involved or even supporting entrepreneurship activities is not very large. It varies, but in generally it will be. See, if you look at government initiatives, there are several initiatives in the past. We have technology business incubators in colleges way back from 1980s. We have science and technology entrepreneurship parks, which has been set up. Then we have the startup wave, which has happened. IEDC centers have been set up. But ask how many people in the education ecosystem actually actively participate in that? Only a very small portion. Because that is never into the key thing. It is many times thought as something which is peripheral. Okay. Even when education institutions, when they set up, and there are many educators here, ask this question, where do you set up this center? Most probably it will be in a remote building. So you are basically signaling, saying that this is not the center of activity. Only when you say it is a center of activity, it happens. There are exceptions. There are colleges which is running industries within. There are universities which are now thinking about that. But that change has to be accelerated a lot. So when students get exposure to these sort of activities while they are studying, automatically they will actually get moved into the entrepreneurship space. Okay. And entrepreneurship is not necessarily only to start industries, but also being innovative in wherever you are going and shows your entrepreneurial skills, right? Even that is not happening because you don't allow people to experiment while they are in the education space.
True, true. Mr. Sangha, any thoughts on this? Do you think that there are certain initiatives which are practical, doable, and make an impact?
Yes, I have some humble suggestions on this. I was first thinking that perhaps we should have asked the minister about this, because politicians are very good at risk-taking and also facing failures. We have parties which fail continuously and then they get ready to fail again in the after next 5 years. There is something that we can learn from them. Now, I think that we need to have two things in educational institutions. One, the teachers, he actually hinted at it. Teachers seem to be people who just verbally they are with innovation and entrepreneurship, but they are actually in the safety of the teaching job. Could there be a scheme where they could be encouraged to come into and be role model entrepreneurs in front of their students? Nothing else works like that. So I'm reminded of teachers who give lectures on healthy food, controlling oil and, carbohydrate and all that. And after the lecture, they go out and take a oil dripping paramburi and eat. So what happens is actually they eat their lecture. The impact is far more when you do something. So I would suggest that as one of the things. And another is, in Kerala specifically, I would like to say, there is a hidden thing that goes against entrepreneurship. There is a general notion in the previous generation that making money is not good. It's a very crime, it's a crime. I must admit I hold that view. However, I wish to throw that out of it. I think there is something not very ideal about it. How can we change that? I have heard some people suggesting that we must celebrate entrepreneurs in educational institutions. You put photographs of Mahatma Gandhi, Buddha and all that in educational institutions. I think they're all not people related to money. I think we need to put up pictures of people who are very successful entrepreneurs. Tell them that they're just not made money, but they made the economy work. They produce a lot of jobs. That perception among students has to change. And I also think that this has something to do with what other things we do. For example, if you are doing indoor games compared to you're taking up adventure sports, you will be more tuned to taking up a risk. I think we need to think of the pedagogy itself needs to be relooked at. The whole curriculum needs to be relooked at. And I also think that we should not pitch directly on entrepreneurship because it's at the top of a pyramid. There are a lot of other things like creative thinking. I'm fond of this word tinkering, which has come into very prominence of recent times. I think tinkering has to be a mainstay of pedagogy for science and technology. This is experimenting and there is a risk taking in that also. Failure also comes in that. So all of this could produce a kind of a social change among both teachers and the whole academic scenario. It's a very tall challenge, but we need to move with some conviction that this needs to happen in coming years.
Very good points, and I would say that at IIM Ahmedabad, just 4 years ago, we have allowed faculty to start their own startups. On the same line that you are saying that rather than just keep preaching, become entrepreneur, let's give this opportunity because earlier you were not, the system was not allowing. Now they're saying we are allowing faculty to start their 2 startups. They can start at least 2 startups. And if they want to take leave from the institute to take care of the startup for 2 years, they're allowing that also. So I do see, where you are coming from and very, very actionable points. Karol, anything from school perspective?
Yeah, sure. No, tinkering. Yeah, I like that. To answer your original question about whether the educational institutions encourage safety over risk taking, absolutely. I mean, that's just the very nature of the business, so to speak. After all, the most basic requirement of a decent school, of anything handling children, is to keep them safe. I mean, we cannot take chances, right? So the very, very, very basic job of a school is to send the kids home safe and sound.
Right, so stability.
So that's there. But I think I have worked with CBSE and also different Indian boards over the years. But most of my expertise comes from working with international boards such as IB and Cambridge, and that way there's a great deal that is being done. There are subjects such as business studies. There are good schools will always have college counselors, career counselors, who will encourage, in fact, demand that the students will do internships during summers, that they will go for summer programs to top universities. And of course, that is definitely yielding results. I mean, I can think of a number of my students who are running their companies now, or are have done startups, very successful ones too. So in fact, I've asked some of them if they'll let me invest in their companies. But so I think it comes to what the board is demanding, or rather what the educational board is offering, and then the individual school, the way it takes it up, and the opportunities that it gives to the students. I also found that the idea of making money that is definitely there, and I find that most of my students would like to make money, a lot of the money.
But I would like to interrupt here. I mean, my son goes to Cambridge school, and I'm assuming the situation is same all over India. It is meant for elite. It is not an education board for masses, okay? So when you come from already an elite background, and there is a lot of support system and financial stability you already have, right? But my question to you, Karol, would be for other schools, which are the schools for masses, are there some initiatives which the schools, principals, teachers can take which can encourage entrepreneurship?
I think that's a good question. I think one would have to do, first of all, thorough analysis of the board, of the educational board that the school is running, and what the opportunities are there. I'm aware of the fact that the NEP talks about entrepreneurship in some detail, and they certainly have, at least in writing, encouraged development of critical thinking skills, risk-taking, research and development. These kind of things are definitely there. What a non-elite school, as you would put it, could do to encourage this, I think that would be something worth thinking, and I think it would require more of me than to just sit here and talk into the microphone. I think that's something that I definitely like to look into.
So if I, kind of look at my own experience and also listen to the conversations that had happened before us, I think still a lot of effort is being made in India to provide funding. Where I personally feel is that where we are lacking in terms of training our students and even college students or university students, and even at IMA I would say, is that their ability to identify problems. You know, everyone is living in their own cocoon, and for them, the interaction with the society, especially people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, going there, interacting with them, understanding what kind of social needs are there, and reflecting, not every social need you will feel passionate about, but is there a social need for which they feel that, they would like to contribute, and then giving them an environment where they can talk about possible solutions, generating idea, and thinking about scalability of that solution. I think those kind of interventions are really lacking at each level of education. Do you think there is something we can do about that?
I just want to add, in Kerala we are doing an experiment. It actually started 3 years back, called Young Innovators Program, which is primarily meant for anyone between the age of 13 to 35. So primarily covering the schools and the higher education, but mostly people are below age of 25. So in the last 3 years, we have covered close to around 2 million people. Okay, and that primary idea is exactly what you said. It starts with design thinking, voice of customer. So the people have been trained, kids have been asked to look at problems around them. And most of them come from government schools and the large masses which you spoke about. They come from that. And we have identified mentors from across the state. They have been trained by Imperial College in the initial stages. And then they actually link them with the research institutions, because once they identify the problem, how do you actually solve? They try to link with them. And not everybody is going to become an entrepreneur, but they actually started looking at what is a real life problem and how do I address that? What is the type of questions I should ask and how do I shape it? So this program is started 3 years back. Now it is sort of stabilized. 6th edition of that is actually happening this year. So over this period, it has matured from one level to another level. It's actually being now looked at multiple levels to see how this can actually be scaled up further. So that can actually be one of the examples which actually addresses some of these issues which you said.
I think that will certainly help. If not everyone could be an entrepreneur, at least they will develop a solution-oriented attitude, which is very, very important. Yes, great. And would you like to, we have 3 minutes. Are we supposed to ask the audience from the question? Yes. Excuse me? Yes. Yeah, we need to give that time. Okay, then I won't ask more questions. I will open the stage for the audience. If there are any questions, you can kindly raise your hand and ask the panelists, please. Any question from the audience? Yeah. It's It's okay, you take mine. Okay.
Thank you for that wonderful session. It brought out the strengths that we have and also the opportunities, I would say. If I were to ask the panel, and any one of you can answer that, given the situation of the rules and regulations in the school system today, where do we start to make the change? Who makes the change and who drives it and who implements it?
I would like to think that your answer, the focus of your attention should not be school alone. I think the home is as well a school or a university. The parents are also having a very important role here. What do we do with education, for example? When the education in the school is bad, then the parents make it up in their own ways. They have some arrangements to do that. I think the society as a whole needs to look at this and see that there is a social transformation happening. I think so training parents is a very important thing for many of these things to happen. I would like to say the higher education system in Kerala is actually one of the biggest enemies of the higher education system are the parents. They come and ask, for example, why you are not giving notes? Because their thought about higher education system is go to the class, the bell rings, then the note is written. When the last bell rings, you close your notebook as well as your mind and go back home. And then the exams come, you do something. So the society as a whole has to have media has a very important role to play. What I'm trying to tell you is that I do not know how to change the school system. It's a very, I understand even the government is actually afraid to really lock horns with the school system because one of the biggest, group of people who are very powerful, unionized and all that. So we can try to make changes there, but we also have to rely on other arms of the society to be doing this. This is my quick take on it.
Yeah, I think very good point. I think I keep telling the parents of my students, if they would only cooperate with me, their children would benefit. Yeah, absolutely. Parents. Another thing I would just like to add is to make career in education attractive to the right people. I think you want the right people to be teaching your children. That's what we all would want, I think, to make it attractive, not just financially but also socially, and something that somebody would like to give their life to.
Yeah, I think it's possible, and we have an example which TiE also acknowledges, because the first team from Kerala which has gone to TiE Global was from a government girls' school, and that has happened because of a transformative model which we experimented. So that sort of a model we can replicate. Unfortunately, when it got replicated, it lost its original essence. That's the sad part. But I think this is a role I think organizations like TiE can play, because when you look at a smaller microcosm of a school, and you can actually make changes if multiple stakeholders there comes in together. That has actually happened. See, not only this prism which I spoke about, but if you look at some of the aspects which some of the media are doing, like Nalla Padam, which I think Madhurumi or Manorama is doing. Yeah, it has actually created a very different level of entrepreneurship and risk-taking among the kids. So that sort of activities are possible in the schools within the existing constraints itself. But at the same time, if you really wanted to make it scale up, maybe larger things have to change. That's what my take on that.
Okay, our time is up, but if there is any pressing question, we can address. Anyone else who would like to ask anything? No, we are good? Okay, and let me give a concluding statement on the question as well as the discussion. I think the main point which everyone is trying to drive home is that it's not one person's job. Entire machinery has to play its role, whether it is policymakers, whether it is Department of Science and Technology in respective states. For example, in Gujarat, DST is very, very active. Our CII center at IMA was largely funded by DST, still getting a lot of support from them. And bureaucrats, the commissioners, they have to work together to facilitate the execution of policies. Vice chancellors, professors, school principals, parents. So all stakeholders have to come together if we really want to make our demographic dividend into entrepreneurial dividend too. So with that, thank you everyone. It was wonderful having you all. Thank you.